everybody. It's the Fan Show. And oh my goodness, we are so excited because we have Nancy Churin on the show. Say hello, Nancy.
Oh, hi. I'm so excited to be here, Van. Oh, I've been looking forward to this for so long.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
I'm a big fan. I'm in the Van fan club.
You're a fan of Van?
I'm a Van fan.
Excellent. Well, now, we didn't come here to talk about me.
Oh.
Although I'm sure Fernie would like that, right, Fernie? Fernie's my biggest fan.
Oh, yeah.
My biggest Fern.
A Fernie fan.
Right?
Yeah.
All right, now we want to learn about you.
Oh.
So first of all, tell us where you're from.
Well, I was born in the Bronx originally, but now I live in Texas. I live in North Texas, actually in Plano, Texas.
Oh, you are an author.
I am.
And you worked in journalism, but I want to hear this story. So when did you realize that you really loved writing?
Oh my goodness, I have to tell you, when I was a little girl, my mother is a teacher. She's retired now, and our house was just filled with books. Actually, we had one room that was filled from floor to ceiling with books. We called it the library, and I was always so proud of the library. Later, my sister told me the reason we had that room with books from floor to ceiling was because it was supposed to be the dining room, and my mother hated to cook. So that was the library. But my mother would read to me every night. She read me The Wizard of Oz, which, I love The Wizard of Oz. And I thought, isn't that how amazing how a book can take you to a different world?
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the crazy, amazing things that books can do for you. And she would read me a chapter every night, and she asked me, Nancy, can I take off on Sundays? And I said, only if I get 2 chapters on Saturday. So I was making deals right then and there. I know.
The great negotiator.
Exactly. And I always had a little notebook with me because I was so grateful to all the wonderful authors that took me to amazing places. I always dreamed one day I could do that for other kids, that I could write books that would take them, to different places, different countries, different time periods. Yeah, and to walk in somebody else's shoes. Isn't that magical?
Well, it sounds like you made your own dream come true.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I'm so happy. I love what I'm doing, Van, and I love sharing it with you and with all the kids.
Oh, well now, before you got to publishing children's books, you did work as a journalist.
I did.
So I want to hear about that leap from writing for newspapers to writing children's books.
Well, that was pretty amazing. One day for the Dallas Morning News, there was a high school in Garland, Texas that was putting on a play called about William Hoy, who was a deaf baseball player. Deaf, he couldn't hear, and he was born when Abraham Lincoln was president.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and baseball was a brand new game, and he wanted to play it more than anything. People said, William, how can you play? You're deaf. You can't hear the umpire's calls. Remember, this is in the 1800s. This is before you have speakers and giant screens, all that.
Yeah.
So he teaches the umpires his language, sign language. Did you know that safe and out is American Sign Language?
No, I didn't.
I know, isn't that crazy? So it was so amazing. So I wrote the article, it ran in the Dallas Morning News, and I get a thank you note from a man in Columbus, Ohio. And I went, wow, well I always like getting a thank you note. Don't you like getting thank you notes?
I do.
Yeah, it was wonderful, but I wrote back, I said, I'm so glad you liked the story, but why is someone in Columbus, Ohio interested in a play in Garland, Texas?
Fair question.
And Steve Sandy wrote back to me and told me that he's deaf, a friend of the Hoy family, and he has dedicated his life to trying to get William Hoy in the National Baseball Hall of Fame.
Oh.
Guess how many deaf players are honored in the Hall of Fame?
I don't know.
Well, 0.
What?
Does that seem right?
No.
No. Now, he is in the Cincinnati Reds Hall of Fame because he played for the Cincinnati Reds for many years, but he's not in the National Baseball Hall of Fame. No deaf players are, and we have started, I promised my friend Steve, I want to help you. So I said, why don't I write a children's book, and if you can help me, and if the Hoy family supports it, I will put that out in the world. And so that's why I wrote it. It was published by Albert Whitman, and it's just been such a joy to share it. I am still sharing it with kids, and every time I share it, I ask if they'll write letters to the National Baseball Hall of Fame. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the book you brought today.
Okay. So this book, Dear Mr. Dickens, very special book to me. You remember I told you about my mom who encouraged me to read everything I wanted to read?
Yeah.
Well, there was actually one author she was not crazy about me reading.
Oh.
and it was one of my favorite authors, Charles Dickens. And I love Charles Dickens. You like Charles Dickens?
Yeah, the Christmas Carol guy.
Oh, the Christmas Carol guy, which by the way was done with puppets too. Did you ever see the Muppet version of that?
Oh, it's my favorite.
I know, it's so good.
Right?
So
Oh, Fernie
good.
loves it too.
Yeah, Fernie, that is a good one, right? So I love it, and I love Charles Dickens. I had to kind of hide my Charles Dickens, but I understood why my mother didn't want me to read to him.
Why is that?
Because he created some ugly stereotypes, in particular Jewish stereotypes like Fagin and Oliver Twist, and he made it seem like, oh, he was so dishonest and he was so ugly, and he kept emphasizing the fact that he was Jewish. And that made her feel bad, and she didn't want me to read books by someone who would write such ugly things about the Jewish community.
Well, that makes sense.
It did, but I knew there had to be more to Charles Dickens, and I kept looking and searching and looking and searching, and I always wished I could write a letter to Charles Dickens saying, well, how come you were so kind to everybody else? You cared about orphans, you cared about the poor, you cared about the vulnerable, but you had no compassion for Jewish people. But how could I write to somebody who lived in the 1800s? Unless I had a time machine. You don't have a time machine, do you?
No, or what was that movie, The Beach House?
Oh, that was cool. Yeah, but then I discovered that the woman named Eliza Davis, a Jewish woman who lived in his time, had written the very letter I dreamed of writing to him. I know, can you believe it?
Wait a minute. Are you sure you didn't make that happen? Like you fell asleep and had a dream, like the lathe of heaven, and like all of a sudden the past is altered and you actually wrote that letter?
You know what? I actually wondered it at the time, Van. I have to tell you. But I actually checked this out with 3 Dickens scholars, and they all vetted it. And I even found a picture of the real Eliza Davis.
Wow.
At the University of Southampton in London. This was incredible. She had written that letter, and not only that, so she writes to him, and at first he goes, "Who's Eliza Davis? Who are you to be writing to me?" So, and then she writes again. She persists. And she writes again, and he starts taking it seriously, and he thinks about it, and she is the reason he wrote his first positive Jewish character.
What?
The kindly Mr. Ria, and our mutual friend. Yes, Ria is actually Hebrew for friend. And he started speaking up for the Jewish community. And England, which had been a place that had been so unkind to Jewish people, they were segregated, they couldn't go to university, college, they couldn't serve in parliament, their government there. There had been so many rules against them. Because Charles Dickens started speaking up for them, everyone listened to Charles Dickens, and things changed for the better.
That there's an award on this book. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh, thank you so much, Van. You are so kind. Well, this book won the National Jewish Book Award, and one of the most wonderful things about that was it gave me the opportunity to travel all around the country, and I even traveled to Canada just to share this book with kids and to get them writing letters and do projects. It also won a Sidney Taylor Honor, which comes from the Association of Jewish Libraries, and it's a Junior Library Guild book.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud of that. Junior Library Guild does such wonderful work putting books into kids' hands, and I'm truly honored to be a Junior Library Guild book selection.
Well, and you know what? That kind of leads me to something.
Yes.
Because you're a Junior Library Guild author, they wanted me to ask you a question about this book as well.
Okay.
Would you be okay with answering that question?
Oh, of course. And I would tell you, can I tell you something? This is actually my second Junior Library Guild book. My first one was Manji Moves a Mountain.
Oh, wow.
So I'm a 2-time Junior Library Guild author.
Oh, my God. Well, well deserved.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Now, they wanted to know if you have ever written a letter to somebody to encourage a change.
Oh, that is a really, really good, that's a good question. You know, I'm going to go back to one of my favorite poets, and, you know, Emily Dickinson once said, you know, I wrote a letter to the world, and she was referring to her poetry. And, you know, I think in a way my books are my letters.
Yeah.
My books are my letters to the world and to the kids. And I'm so grateful when the kids get these books, or when I share them, or when they've even read them independently. Sometimes they send me letters back, and I feel that that's our exchange. And that's what I always dreamed of since I was little, and since I was so moved by, you know, the books I read, which were to me letters that came across time. Sometimes the author was no longer with us, like L. Frank Baum and you know, Wizard of Oz, but he had written me a letter, and he had given me a gift in the Wizard of Oz. And that's what I always hope to do for the kids, give them books that were like letters to them.
That's beautiful, and you absolutely do.
Oh, thank you, Van.
Well, Nancy,
So
thank you so much
sweet.
for coming on the show.
Oh, this is such an honor. Oh My goodness, you really did make my dream come true. And I'm an even bigger Van fan and Fernie fan too. Fernie Van fan.
Fernie fan. Fernie.
I'm a Fernie fan and a Van fan.
Fernatic is what we call them.
Oh, there you go.
Goodbye.
Bye.